Prime Minister Mark Carney told U.S. President Donald Trump that Canada will retaliate if the U.S. goes ahead with additional tariffs on April 2nd. Trump is promising additional levies, including auto tariffs, this coming week. Susan Rice served as U.S. ambassador to the UN during the Obama administration. She was also U.S. National Security Advisor from 2013 to 2017. I spoke to her earlier about the impact tariffs will have on the Canadian and U.S. economies and what this means for the relationship between our two countries. Ambassador Rice, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Rosemary.
President Trump has announced a 25% tariff on all non-U.S. made autos, perhaps going into effect April 2nd, along with perhaps reciprocal tariffs right around the world. There are steel and aluminum tariffs already in effect. What do you make of Donald Trump's strategy to try and rebuild, I guess, the American economy, and what impact do you think they will have?
Well, I'm not sure there is a coherent strategy. We hear multiple and varying rationales for these tariffs, from fentanyl to immigration to manufacturing. Donald Trump negotiated the U.S. Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement. It's his deal that he's deliberately violating. And in the case of Canada, he continues to imply, and in fact, in some instances, state specifically, that his objective is to turn Canada into the 51st state. Yeah. And so I'm not sure at all that this is about manufacturing. And if it were, the tariffs are being applied and unapplied and slapped around in such a half crazy way that it's very unlikely to yield the desired effects. And the consequences will be enormous for the American consumer, who will pay a great deal more for cars and many other things. Obviously, also for Canadian consumers and economies of both countries. So this is really a self-defeating and ill-advised economic policy. But it also has no clear rationale or objective.
This is, as you probably know, is playing out during a federal election here, and the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who's obviously trying to win the election, said that in response to these latest threats, that the old relationship Canada had with the U.S. based on a deep integration of our economies, tight security, and military cooperation is over. I wonder if you agree with that, and how in that instance, if Canada is looking at the U.S. in that way, how Canada moves forward, given that we are sitting right next to you.
Well, it's hard to argue that things haven't changed dramatically. And so when the Prime Minister says that things are going to be different, I think that's just a statement of reality and the obvious. And I think it puts the people of both countries in a very difficult position. We are friends. We are longtime allies. We share a peaceful border. We share values, we share interests, and yet we're being pitted against one another for reasons that none of us understand and nobody wants. So I think Canada, like any responsible sovereign state, like the U.S. should be, will stand up for its interests. And, for decades and generations, our interests have been very closely aligned. Economically, from a security point of view, and from a values point of view. And now suddenly that's been called into question and cast into doubt by Donald Trump.
This realignment that the president, I guess, is attempting here, whether he's trying to cozy up to Russia or to China or what have you, how troubling is that for you, living in the United States, to see him moving away from traditional security and trading partners like Canada and towards countries that have not been allies traditionally?
It's profoundly concerning, and it is not in the interest of the United States of America. We have kept the peace and maintained security through a network of alliances and partnerships that have served us extremely well since virtually the end of World War II. We have thrived in North America with an integrated economy between the United States, Canada, and more recently Mexico. And our security has been bolstered on a mutual basis through NORAD and our shared partnership and alliance in NATO. And now all of that, as well as our Asian alliances, are being cast to the side. And we have a president of the United States who would much rather, seemingly, align the United States with autocratic regimes in Russia and China that are antithetical to our security interests and our economic interests. So this is profoundly concerning. And I hope Canadians understand that this does not reflect the views and the orientation of the vast majority of Americans.
You mentioned security, and I do want to get your perspective on these signal chats, these text messages about the Yemen strikes published by The Atlantic that Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, was giving very detailed specifics over signal texts, and a journalist was copied on them. I mean, this is a security breach unlike anything I think we've both ever seen before. What does that tell you about the administration's approach to national security?
Well, it's reckless and it's negligent. I mean, first of all, national security deliberations of the sort I chaired when I was the national security advisor to the President of the United States about a subject as serious as whether or not to engage in military action against a foreign adversary is something that should not be deliberated over a signal chat or any kind of chat app with emojis. It should be a very thoughtful, extended, considered deliberation, meeting in person in the White House Situation Room, often several such meetings, in order to come to a perspective and make a recommendation as to how to proceed to the President of the United States. The fact that they're not having serious deliberations is concerning. The fact that they are having classified conversations over an unsecure app, a chat app, is profoundly concerning. Even the discussion, the deliberation as to whether or not to engage in military action against the Houthis, which was part of this conversation, is itself classified for obvious reasons, because if a foreign adversary were able to get advance warning that the United States was considering an attack, that would give them the ability to evade the attack, to harden their defenses, and perhaps preemptively attack the United States and our personnel. Then you add to that we're talking about the most sensitive details of an attack plan, and that they're doing it in such a haphazard and reckless way that they don't even notice that they incorporated a journalist into the chat. I mean, the whole thing is mind-boggling. And highly, highly disturbing to Americans, but also to people who trust and rely on us or have trusted and relied on us for decades.
Well, I mean, that is my next question, is whether you think Canada and other allies should continue to share intelligence with the U.S. or should be confident in sharing intelligence with the U.S. given this.
Well, look, this has shaken Americans, and I'm sure it's shaken our allies and partners around the world. Our intelligence sharing relationship has been mutually beneficial for decades. It is manifestly in our shared interest to maintain it, but it is not unreasonable for both sides, all sides, to expect and demand that the information we share is kept in a secure way.
Sure. I'll just end on this, Ambassador Rice. As Canada sort of is constantly threatened, as you said, with the annexation, with the tariffs, what do you think should be the approach from the Canadian government or officials in terms of managing this? Because it has upended, really, a lot of the Canadian economy and, indeed, Canadians' trust in the United States.
Well, I understand that how destabilizing and bewildering this is for Canadians and for the Canadian government, as it is for our allies in Europe and Asia as well.
For sure.
My job is not to advise the Canadian government, but I do think that Canada, as the Prime Minister has said, needs to look out, as every country does, for its own interests and to adjust to the realities as they evolve. I will just end with a restatement of what I hope is the obvious. The United States and Canada are the best of friends, the closest of allies, and that needs to be sustained and retained. And I hope that Canadians understand that the vast majority of Americans respect them, appreciate them, and know that you are our indispensable friends and allies. And, this is a difficult period for Canada, but it's also a difficult period for the United States as well.
Ambassador Rice, very kind of you to make the time. Thank you so much.
Take care.